Tony D and Little Joan in the background, and this is your screenwriter's take on The Barrens, a 2012 movie that takes place in the Pine Barrens, starring Stephen Moyer, and is about the Jersey Devil. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Check out my book, speaking of the Jersey Devil, The Pineys, books 1 through 17, available at Amazon.com. Don't forget, Kindle Unlimited is free. There's your Jersey Devil. Haha. So as an expert on the Jersey Devil, this is a movie I had to review. It is currently playing on Tubi, so as always, I will give you my non-spoiler review and then my spoiler review. All right, so non-spoiler. This is a movie about the Pine Barrens that I feel was made by a guy who's never really set foot there. It's fairly well researched, but the tiny little details, a lot of them are wrong. It's not grossly wrong, but he misses the mark on certain little tiny details. So, for instance, the Jersey Devil legend that he lays out is a variation on it. I've heard one similar, but never one like that. And I think he took some liberties with it, which is fine. It wasn't disrespectful or anything. The problem with it is, although I read the write-up on it, although the production intended to shoot in the Pine Barrens, they ended up shooting it in Ontario. And you got to shoot it in the Pine Barrens for it to be authentic. I mean, you just have to. There are a lot of things in the movie that just scream Northwest. I thought maybe it was Northern California or Washington State. My girlfriend is from that area. She thought it was maybe that. Ontario scans. Another thing that's in the movie that really wouldn't be in a Jersey thing was that there was an Indian guy who was one of the park rangers. Now that is pretty common out west, my understanding is. It's not so common here. I mean, it's just camping in the pines is pretty fast and loose. You don't really need a permit. Not really. There's a lot of homeless guys that camp in the pines. In some campgrounds you do, obviously. But the movie just felt inauthentic. It didn't feel... I've been camping in the Pine Barrens. It didn't feel like the Pine Barrens. But that being said, the movie tries pretty hard. It's paced pretty well. And it's not unentertaining. It's a bit odd. There's some odd choices. There are a bunch of movie scenes, if that makes any sense. Scenes that really only take place in a movie. It didn't feel all that organic, but it felt organic enough in a movie you could kind of tolerate it. I wouldn't go to the theaters to see this. I wouldn't recommend it heartily, but if I was sitting around with my friends and it came on TV, I'd say, this is okay. It's watchable. I would say it's watchable. There's some odd stuff, but it does explain itself by the end of the movie. And the ending's not the worst ending in the world. I kind of like the ending, to be honest. But that being said, there's a lot of problems from a South Jersey perspective. In terms of the flavor, I think he got it wrong. The writer and director's from Kansas. He went to school in Florida, and I assume he works in California a lot. Yeah, I don't think he spent a lot of time in the Pine Barrens. He might have came here scouting locations initially, but when they ended up shooting in Ontario, I mean, the movie felt like it was content. You know, they got, apparently, according to the write-up, they got jammed up between the weather and the schedule of the actors, and they had to sort of blast through it in 18 days, which is not a lot of time to shoot a full-length movie. However, for what they got, it was pretty tight. Again, paced pretty well. It just, yeah, it's not great. I would give it out of 10, maybe a 6.5. 7 would be like, oh, it's good. But a little less than good. It's okay. It's watchable. but I can't tell you more without getting into the details. Okay, that's my non-spoiler review. I know, not a very strong endorsement of it, but let's get into why. Now, spoilers ahoy. If you want to watch this, stop the video now and go to Tubi. It's on Tubi TV for free. I don't know how long it's on. Okay. First act. Spoilers ahoy. First act. Really an opening. A couple goes into the Pine Barrens and they're killed by the Jersey Devil. Before they're killed, they find a giant pile of entrails, which I strongly suspect were the movie entrails that were used during the course of the film in other scenes, and they shot this scene last, and they said, just pile all the entrails up, and they stumble upon it and realize, oh my God, what the hell killed all these things, and then the Jersey Devil comes out and kills them. So that's the opening scene. Then it cuts to Stephen Moyer and his family getting ready to go camping. And as they're getting ready, we get into the family drama. The mother is a stepmom to a teenage girl who's 17 and who's a bit out of control. Doesn't want to go camping, of course. Moyer and his new wife have a son together who's 6. Now, his dog has been missing. He's putting up signs that say lost dog, and he doesn't want to leave without the dog. He leaves food out for him. And Stephen Moyer is sort of mum about the dog, which comes back later. All right, now they go to the campground. Now they had Pennsylvania license plate. You see them entering into New Jersey. And then they pass a sign for Leeds Point, the Jersey Devil. And they get to the campground. Campground is super crowded. And they end up pitching their tent right next to a bunch of frat guys who are making a ton of noise. Seems to defeat the purpose of going camping. I don't know why Stephen Moyer's character stayed there. Eventually he does move, but it felt like they were a little too close together. But again, they had to shoot this thing. So, understanding their production problems, I understand why they did it. But from a viewer perspective, I felt like the scenes that take place early in the campsite were just like, why would you go camping here? This is terrible. So they tell the story of the Jersey Devil around a campfire, one of the frat boys does, while another frat boy leaves to go to the bathroom. At the end of the story, the other frat boy who left comes back dressed as the Jersey Devil and scares everybody. And then Stephen Moyer gets way too mad about it. The implication is that Stephen Moyer saw the Jersey Devil when he was a kid. But that kind of doesn't scan either, because Stephen Moyer, I guess he's English or Australian. He's got an accent. And I don't know why they didn't tell him to do an American accent in this movie. I wish he had, because he feels out of place. He doesn't feel like a local who saw the Jersey Devil. He feels like a foreigner who saw the Jersey Devil. And the implication is he's lived in America all his life, but he sounds like he hasn't lived in America all his life. So that's kind of an odd thing. I wish he had done a Jersey accent. I'm surprised they didn't make him do that. Again, it might have been a money concern. This isn't a high-budget affair. So, so after the scare, he gets really too mad, and then he has to apologize to his wife, and the teenager's mad because she's trying to hook up with all the boys. And then Stephen Moyer is like, oh, we're going to move the campsite tomorrow. So next morning they wake up, and one of the frat boys didn't come back after going out in the woods to take a pee. Nobody seems to be very concerned about that at first, and which is weird. The reaction of the characters is just sort of like, oh yeah, he went out to take a pee, never came back. Oh, well. Then a cop shows up, and then I was like, oh, okay, the cop's here. So that's why they're not that concerned. They're going to pawn it off to the cops. But then even the cop dismisses it and said, well, he's probably drunk, lying in the woods somewhere. No, I think he might be dead. Now, I wasn't thinking Jersey Devil, but maybe he just tripped and hit his head, and he's bleeding to death somewhere. It seemed awfully dismissive of somebody who walked into the Pine Barrens and didn't come back. By the way, the movie's called The Barrens, And even in the movie, they at some point one of the characters says, "Oh, let's go to the Barrens or whatever." No one calls it that here. It's called the Pine Barrens or the Pines. I understand why the writer director shortened it. That was a good guess, but that's not the way we went. We went with the Pines. You going into the Pines tonight? Yeah, going into the Pines. At least that's the way I've always heard it. I've never heard anyone in South Jersey call it the Barrens. But maybe he heard it from somebody else. I don't know. So then Stephen Moyer wants to move the campsite and go away from all the noise, which I can't blame him. So he packs up his family, and they're arguing and fighting. They kind of don't want to do it, but they go with him anyway, and they start trudging through the Pine Barrens. Where they kind of get lost or do get lost, it's not very clear. Sorry, I'm drinking seltzer. Now, eventually, they reach a campsite where it's all wrecked. Like, the whole campsite's wrecked, right? There's a tent, and then there's a bunch of crazy stuff hanging in the trees. Now, earlier in the movie, they mentioned a Piney who lived out in the woods who was kind of crazy. And I thought, oh, we're going to meet that guy. So we're looking at all this crazy stuff, and then suddenly one of the kids screams, and the girl screams, and the mom screams, and I'm like, oh, I guess they found a body, probably of that crazy Piney. No, they find a body of a dead dog. And I'm like, okay, this is confusing. Is this the kid's dog? It's not. But apparently somebody tied the dog up and it died there. It's pretty horrible. I don't know of any Piney who would do that. But I guess the implication was the Jersey Devil killed the campers and left the poor dog tied to a tree and didn't eat him. Anyhow, Stephen Moyer says, well, I got to get rid of this dog. So naturally, he carries him away while vomiting from the awful smell of the dog carrion, and then throws him in a river? That is the dumbest place to throw a dead body, because you're going to spoil the water for anybody who would drink it. You don't throw a dead body into... You might cover it up with dirt. You could have done that in the Pine Barrens. That would be incredibly easy, because again, it's very sandy. But for some reason, Stephen Moyer throws it into a river. Now, after he does that, he stands up, and you realize behind him is like a wall of rock, like a natural formation of rock. Problem is, of course, if you've ever been to the Pine Barrens, you are never going to encounter that in the Pine Barrens. Just about never. It's pretty flat in the Pine Barrens, like ridiculously flat. There's some hills, little rises up and down, but there's no rocks. Hardly any. There might be one or two rock formations somewhere. Most of that stuff's up north Jersey. The movie does mention Wharton State Forest specifically. You probably wouldn't find any rock formations in Wharton State Forest. You'd be hard-pressed to do it. So that made it really not look like the Pine Barrens. And somebody pushes rocks kind of off the wall, kind of at Steven, and you're not sure. At this point, you're not sure if he's like whacked out, because there's a scene where he takes some pills, and he keeps saying that his arm is bothering him, or his shoulder, and he never explained why. So you're kind of left to wonder, was he a drug addict, or is he just weird? He's snapping at people, and now he's taking pills, and now he's doing this, and you're kind of like, he's acting really weird. Why is he acting so weird? We're getting to that, but it's a slow build. So then, out of nowhere, the guy who told the Jersey Devil story, who's also one of the teenagers that wants to get with his daughter, shows up and says, hey, you dropped your knife. And literally, he hands him back his knife. And Stephen Moyer is like, oh, thanks. What are you doing here? And he's like, oh, well, I'm sorry I scared your kid about that Jersey Devil story, but I'm here to see Sadie. Not a great name for a young girl these days, but whatever. Um, and then Stephen Moyer, who's a little bit wide-eyed, tells him his version of the Jersey Devil legend, and that he saw it and he basically believes in it. And as he's telling him, he's inching closer, and the kid's backing away. And then he tells his version of the Jersey Devil legend, which again, it's a version. I've never heard that version before. Maybe taking creative liberties with it. But I thought this whole movie would tie into the Jersey Devil somehow, and it does, but it kind of doesn't in a way. So he eventually leaves that guy, and throughout the movie, I'm saying to myself, I bet Stephen Moyer's the Jersey Devil. Because he's acting so weird, I was thinking maybe he keeps transforming into the Jersey Devil and killing people and then turning back human and coming back. And by this time, we see that he's injured on his right arm. Okay? And he's acting weird, and his wife eventually confronts him, and he admits that his son's dog bit him, and he had the dog put down. Now, when they show you that scene in flashback, you see that the dog is foaming at the mouth. Now, you just went, oh, he has rabies. Because everybody knows you don't want to get bit by a dog that's foaming at the mouth, right? I mean, like, literally everybody knows that. I think even toddlers know that you stay away from dogs that are foaming at the mouth. I mean, that's something I was taught very, very young. But Stephen Moyer doesn't seem to know or care about that. And that happened weeks ago, as it's revealed in the movie. He has rabies, like a lot of rabies, like advanced rabies. And and even though they establish in the movie that his wife's a nurse, he did not get it treated. So, yeah. Kind of a giant plot hole there. But it does explain his strange behavior. But now, you're thinking, oh, he didn't see the Jersey Devil. He's hallucinating because of the rabies. And he even has a dream about the Jersey Devil chasing him. So now, it turns into a different kind of movie. The nurse wife eventually figures out he has rabies. And there's a couple other scenes, again, with this ripped up tent. They don't, they find like a bunch of stuff in it. And they find like a book that's a brand new book, but it has drawings of the Jersey Devil, but on the right side of it, it has all kinds of strange language, but it's a brand new book. It has like a plastic binder. It's not like an ancient book. It's like a brand new book, like that somebody put together. And they don't really explain that. Eventually, the nurse figures out, oh my God, he has rabies. We have to get him home. So then they decide, okay, we're leaving. Right? So now they're finally leaving. Meanwhile, like, all the frat boys have been killed. And I don't think the police are involved yet. I think maybe they found the first guy dead. But they're trying to get out of the woods. They're also trying to call for help. The signal's going in and out. Eventually, nurse wife gets the cops on the phone. As she does, Stephen Moyer walks away with the 6-year-old, leaves the mom with the teenager. She tells the cops. And now the cops were there earlier when the first guy was missing and they had some encounter with the family. So he's like, oh, I think I know what trail you went on. We're going to try to find you. Sit tight or whatever. But by this time, Stephen Moyer's rabies is extremely advanced. He's starting to hallucinate, maybe, and he's definitely super paranoid. So the mom and the teenager are in one area. He and the 6-year-old in another area, and they're looking for him. They find the kid face down in the river, and they have to revive him, which they successfully do. As they revive him, boom, Stephen Moyer pops out of nowhere. And now they realize, oh my God, we got to get rid of this guy or get away from him. So during that sequence, at some point, Stephen Moyer ends up shoving his wife, and she breaks her leg badly, like a compound fracture sticking out kind of thing. It's really gross. And now they have to knock Stephen Moyer out, tie him to a tree, so the mom can say to the teenager, take your brother and get help, right? And leaves her behind to try to treat her own leg, which she kind of sort of does. The teenager and the son try to flee. They run into a cougar, which isn't unheard of in the Pine Barrens, but they're pretty damn rare. Pretty damn rare. Like, so rare, like there have been reports. But usually if there's a cougar loose, there'll be a news report about it. There was a few years ago. That's the last time I heard of a cougar loose in the Pine Barrens. We don't have a ton of apex predators. However, they have, the rumor is they are making a comeback. You could have made an argument for it. The deer population is a bit crazy these days. The fox have returned, but most of the eastern seaboard mountain lions were wiped out like in the 1800s. 50 years ago, we had wolves. They're all gone. But we do have feral dogs and maybe some coyotes. And maybe a handful of bears, but most of those are up north. Again, you'd hear about it on the news here if there was a bear in Wharton State Forest and somebody got attacked. It would be a huge news story here. So, yeah, again, research. This is where the research sort of goes off the rails. You didn't shoot it in the Pine Barrens. It's not sandy enough. You got the wrong pine trees in the background. You did okay with the Jersey Devil legend, but animal-wise, you kind of picked the wrong animals. It's not that dangerous in the pines. That's why a lot of people go there. That's why you can go there. There's almost, the kind of danger in the pine is there is a rattlesnake. You have to watch out for him. The ticks are a huge problem. There's a few other animals that would give you some issues, but not like you're going to be killed. And the movie acts as if that's a regular thing in the Pine Barrens, and it's just kind of not. Anyhow, as the teenager and the son, the brother are getting away, they encounter a mountain lion, and crazy Piney guy suddenly shows up and shoots them. Saves them. And then the father shows up. By this time, the nurse has pushed her bone back into her body and somehow gotten back on her feet to limp away. And but Stephen Moyer is going nuts. They know he has rabies. He's got a big bite out of his arm. And literally, the nurse, one of the lines in the movie is, well, you haven't treated it in weeks. We have to get you to a hospital. Like, why wouldn't Stephen Moyer go to the doctor after he got bit by this dog that was very obviously rabid? I guess he didn't want to tell his son? I don't know. So now Stephen Moyer shows up. He's hallucinating badly. He keeps seeing the Jersey Devil. Nobody else is really kind of seeing it. He struggles with the Piney over the gun, eventually gets it from him, sort of chases down his daughter and son and wife, and the Jersey Devil shows up. And you're thinking like, well, is he real or is he not? He points the gun at the Jersey Devil just as the cops show up. Now, they've been tracking them. They've found all the bodies. They found the knife that they suspect foul play from Stephen Moyer. So when they catch up to him, of course, he's at that moment pointing a gun in the direction of his daughter, but he's really pointing it at the Jersey Devil behind her, which she sees and everybody else sees. And the cop's screaming at him to drop the gun. He won't drop the gun, so eventually the cop shoots him. But then it turns out the Jersey Devil is definitely real, so the Jersey Devil kills the cop, just like myrtleizes him. The indigenous Indian guy, like normally in these movies, the indigenous Indian guy, he's a guy who's like, oh, I will pull out a magic charm and burn this incense, and the Jersey Devil will be hypnotized and go away. No, he runs away. He just gets the F out of there. He's like, screw this. He runs. Just leaves everybody to die. And die they do. Because then the next shot is Stephen Moyer, who's been shot, and he has rabies, reaching out for his wife's hand and his family's hands, and then the Jersey Devil just sort of comes down, and you hear the Jersey Devil noise, and that's the end of the movie. So, now you understand my misgivings. On the one hand, kind of a cool ending, right? They all die, and the Jersey Devil's real. But on the other hand, why did we go into this rabies story? Like, why did we need that story? Just so he can make a bunch of bad decisions? It seems like he made a hugely bad decision by saying, oh, I got bit by a rabid dog. Well, that'll probably go away. No, I don't think so. I think you needed to go to a hospital rather than this camping trip. Because keep in mind, the nurse character says, you haven't treated it in weeks. Weeks. Who the hell gets bit by a dog and then says, well, this hasn't healed in a day? I think I'll just, give it another week. Like, if something doesn't scab over in a day, you got to go to the hospital, man. And if you get bit by a dog, you definitely have to go to the freaking hospital and tell them you got bit by a dog. Because if you got bit bad and he broke the skin and he has rabies, you got to start getting shots immediately. And let me tell you something. Stephen Moyer, had he even survived the Jersey Devil and getting shot and everything, he wouldn't be surviving. Because he literally had rabies for weeks, untreated. That pretty much a death sentence, I think. I don't think you survive that. So it's a weird choice. I mean, I didn't see it coming. My initial thought was, he's acting weird. Oh, he must be the Jersey Devil, and he's secretly transforming, killing people, and he doesn't remember, or he secretly kills people, and he feels bad about it, but he doesn't want to tell his family. Like something like that. Because I was trying to explain the bad behavior, or the weird behavior. No, it just turns out he has rabies, and he's had it the whole time, and somehow his wife didn't notice the huge bite on his arm that's bleeding for weeks. And she's a nurse. She's a nurse. So, yeah, it's an odd movie. But maybe had to come together this way because of all the production problems they had. Still doesn't excuse it, though. Look, filmmakers, if you're going to make a movie and you're going to say, oh, we're out of money, let's slap it together, and then the movie doesn't do that well now you know why. Because you had to slap it together just to make your money. And this is the problem with making content rather than film. If somebody had really invested in this movie, and I mean emotionally, creatively, they would have said, well, we can't release it yet. We got to reshoot some scenes or fix it. A content producer fixes it as best they can. And that's what this felt. And look, the skill is here. I'll say that. They did make a coherent narrative. It's very coherent. I knew exactly what was going on in each scene. There were interesting surprises. There were a lot of dramatic moments. Again, it just felt like TV movie moments. But overall, it kept my attention. But those are tricks of the trade. And let me tell you something. The writer and producer here was using every single one. And the movie is a tight, what was it? How many minutes was this thing? 94 minutes. Yeah, that's pretty tight. Pretty tight. Came out in 2012. I'll tell you the other weird thing. The last name of the family was Vineyard. So his name was Richard Vineyard, Cynthia Vineyard, Sadie Vineyard. That's an old lady name. And Danny Vineyard. With Francois de Janas as the Jersey Devil. The Jersey Devil costume was pretty much on point. You know, big, furry, horns, big horse head, fangs and whatnot, hairy. Yeah, it shows it flying. It's always like, you know, behind trees and stuff for most of the movie. But the Jersey Devil looked good. I would have liked to have seen more of the Jersey Devil. You know, he's treated as just kind of a monster that just eats everything. Eats deer, eats people. Doesn't seem to discriminate. I would have liked to have seen more of a discriminating Jersey Devil, that he ate certain, say, bad people. I mean, he's been haunting the Pine Barrens for 300 years. They say 400 in the movie. Almost 400. Got it wrong. So, born in, classically from the Jersey Devil book, 1735, 1835, 1935, 2035 would be almost, that would be 300, not 400. So, a few details wrong, but again, it felt like, you know, an outsider looking in, trying to get everything right. But that, you know, I don't knock the skill of this movie. You know, for a low budget production, it came together. It came together. If you had used a completely made up monster, been fine. For a lot of, I think it would have been better off with a made up monster. Actually, if you could have made a made up monster, or like a werewolf maybe, type character, somehow tie it in the dogs, like if it was the Dog Man or something like that. That sort of tie in, because he got bit by a dog, because there was a lot of dog stuff in the film, that would have went together. It just felt like, oh yeah, and keep in mind, he was also going to the Pine Barrens to spread the ashes of his father, who used to bring him to the Pine Barrens. And he had a bad experience in the Pine Barrens. But for some reason, he wanted to go back to spread the ashes and bond with his family. So there's a lot of ands here, right? So on the one hand, they want to go and bond, but on the other hand, he's spreading the ashes of his father. Okay, you only needed one of those. You just needed to get them to the Pine Barrens. So them going to bond as a family, that's more than enough. It's more than enough. You had, you know, him seeing the Jersey Devil there, but at the same time, and he's the only one that sees it, but at the same time, he's got rabies, which you don't explain until later. So it'd be different if you explained it early on. What you really needed was an explanation of why he didn't treat the rabies. Like, I don't know, he's afraid of doctors, or he didn't have time, or he didn't want to look weak in front of his family, or something like that. Or it had happened much more recently. Apparently it takes a while, which is, I guess, why they said weeks. So there's a lot of problems with the plot if you think about it. If you don't think about it, it just sort of breezes along and ends. And now you understand why I only give it a 6.5. It feels like they were really trying to make a good movie, but everything was against them. Sometimes, like, everything's against you when you make one of these things. It really is the truth. So I feel for the filmmakers. They dealt with a lot of rain. They dealt with a lot of problems. Dealt with a lot of scheduling. You know, you needed a guy. They needed a guy like me. A guy like me, I could have fixed every problem in this movie, at least in terms of the Jersey Devil stuff. I couldn't have done anything I would have said, you can't do it. You're going to shoot it up in Toronto. You're going to need a big pile of gray sand for a couple of the scenes, because that's the way the Pine Barrens is. And even if they just put in a scene like that, a scene in which characters are running and then they get, you know, they're running through some deep gray sand, like one of them falls down, that would have went a long way. Like, oh, there you go. That's the Pine Barrens. It must be. Look at the sand. The other problem, I guess, again, was the trees The pine trees weren't quite right. They're too big. They're too thick. Our pine trees are, a lot of them are only about this big around, you know? But the ones in the movie were like this big around. So, yeah, didn't quite work. And again, Stephen Moyer's accent, no bueno. That would have been one of my major changes. If he had just done a Jersey accent or just a generic American accent, he would have been fine. He would have been fine. In fact, he didn't need to do a Jersey accent. He was from Pennsylvania. And there's a weird moment in the movie where the cop asks him, "Oh, where are you from?" And he says Philly, and his wife has to sort of correct him and say by way of England, because he obviously has an accent. And then she asks him later, "Why did you lie to the police?" So I guess it's because he has rabies and it's eating away at his brain. But it just seemed like a lot of weird stuff happened, and that wasn't explained until they went, "Oh yeah, he's got rabies, he's screwed." But what I thought the ending would have been, and I think this would have been a little cooler, and I would have recommended this, was he gets shot at the end of the movie, and you don't know if the Jersey Devil's real or not. And maybe one of the other characters sees something but isn't sure what they saw. And then that's the end of the movie. Like, they take him away, and he's dying of rabies anyway, so he's a goner. And as he dies, he's like, "The Jersey Devil, the Jersey Devil." And is the Jersey Devil real or not? Now, the beginning of the movie kind of establishes him as real, but you could say, "Oh, well, it was probably a bear or something." You don't really see the Jersey Devil. But I think keeping the Jersey Devil in this particular movie a little bit more vague, is it real, is it not, probably would have worked better as an ending. Also, the title, again, you should have called it The Pines, not The Barrens. That name may have been taken. The Pine Barrens would have been good, or, we could come up with more names. But, Leeds Devil, I don't think anybody's used that yet for a movie. But, overall, very flawed in my view, but, they tried. It's a shame they can't seem to nail the Jersey Devil. But then again, maybe they need to read the Pineys. And that's it for me, Tony D and Little Joan. Thanks for tuning in to this, I hope, very enlightening thing. Again, it's on Tubi if you want to see it. Kind of interesting when they do something about the Jersey Devil. I'm always on top of it. Anyhow, thanks for tuning in. I'll be at Lucille's Luncheonette, speaking of the Jersey Devil, tomorrow from 10 to 2. Looks like the weather, let me check the weather one more time. So we'll see the weather, make sure it's good. It's not good here, but up in Warren Grove, New Jersey. We'll check one last time. I think we're going to be good. Yeah, it's looking clear all day. So 10 to 2 tomorrow at Lucille's Luncheonette in Warren Grove. Hope to see you there. We'll see you tomorrow.